Hey guys, what's up? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Hudspath, and I do vocals for the band Nightshade. We're a death metal band, just got signed to Bullet Tooth Records. We'll have a worldwide record release here. On April 26th is the date for our US release, and there's a May date release for Europe and other countries. This is going to be a step-by-step guide on death metal vocals. I've received a lot of requests from people. I decided to assemble this myself over the past couple days, and hopefully I can help you guys out and get started. I know it's not exactly an easy thing to get into, but you know, once you get going and start feeling comfortable with yourself, there's only room to grow. So I'll be going over a bunch of different styles, traditional death metal growls and screams. I'll be going over melodic death metal growls and screams, and some other obscure styles that I've kind of concocted myself. I don't really have any names for any of the styles I do. This video is basically just gonna try and, you know, help you dig inside and find that potential you have locked inside there. So hopefully I can help all you guys out. Basically, by the end of this video, I feel confident that whoever's viewing it should, you know, have a better grasp on the essence of vocals. How to do it, you'll definitely understand a little bit better. I cannot guarantee that, you know, you'll be able to pick it up and sound like Jesus after you listen to this video, but you'll definitely have a firmer grasp on your own voice and, you know, how to advance yourself. You guys have to remember, the first time you go through this video and you attempt, you know, to make these sounds and do these types of vocals, that you might not get it your first time. And if you don't, that's not a reason to give up. I mean, it's something that really takes some time to get used to, not only to be able to do it, but to have the endurance to do it for an extended period of time. It might take you a while to, you know, find the right sound, but once you do, you just got to work on the endurance and, you know, the effectiveness of your voice, basically. And I'll help you out a little bit here, going step by step, going through the different styles of vocals, telling you which ones are easier to learn, which ones are harder. You know, everybody learns at a different pace, so I'll just try and make this more clear for everybody here. As far as my own talent goes, I know I might not be the best vocalist out there, or, you know, have the most experience out of any vocalist, but I feel like I know enough to where, you know, I can share some knowledge and help some other fellow metalheads get off the ground. I really haven't seen another guide that, you know, really describes how to perform the vocals and, you know, how to continue doing them and to progress yourself to get better. I mean, I've seen other videos such as Melissa Cross and, you know, other videos online. They're all, you know, great videos that have certain things to offer, but as far as a full compilation and an entire, you know, guide on how to actually do this and get yourself better, I really haven't seen anything like that. So hopefully I can get that done for everybody. Before we get started with anything, it's really important that we start with warming up just a little bit before we start, especially if you're starting this for the first time. Imagine that you're sitting in a jacuzzi and then you get out, you go and jump into an ice cold pool. That's basically what you do to your vocal cords if you don't warm up before you start screaming. Once you're more experienced and get in the groove of doing things, it's not so important to warm up, but it's still definitely a really good idea. Just a couple warm-up techniques I'll go through here with you. There's a breathing technique I like to use to warm up your diaphragm and your lungs, you know, to expand them to their full capacity, because you'll need a lot of airflow for what we're going to be practicing here today. And you'll also need to, I'll show you a humming warm-up that I like to do. That's actually one thing that Melissa Cross taught from her How to Scream Volume 1 that I really like to use. It works really well, and I'll go through both of those with you right now. Well, the first warm-up I'm going to go through with you guys is a really simple breathing technique. It's something you can do anytime. It'll help you expand your lung capacity, something you can do before you go to bed, while you're driving, whatever you want. Basically, you want to take a full breath of air and fill up your diaphragm. Which you can tell when you're breathing with your diaphragm, because when you breathe, your stomach will expand. Not your chest. You want your stomach. Alright, so what you'll want to do is you want to fill up your diaphragm, the stomach region, right here, up with air. You want to fill it up as far as you can. And once you're at your maximum capacity, you want to take tiny sips of air. just small sips of air and continue to fill up your lungs until you're surpassed past your maximum diaphragm holding capacity. Basically, it'll go something like this. And you want to hold it for at least 5 to 10 seconds. Rinse and repeat a couple times. Yeah, this really helps the expansion of your lungs. So over time, you can eventually hold more air in your lungs and in your diaphragm. And it'll give you better breathing control while you're actually performing the vocals. I'll go through it with you one more time. And as you continue to do this, you'll notice that your lungs will actually hold more air. It's just the fact that you need to do this every day and exercise your lungs to the point where it can naturally hold that much air. The next warm-up I'm going to go through is the humming technique I learned from Melissa Cross. If you haven't seen the video, I'll go through it with you right now. Basically, you're going to want to find the point in your throat where when you hum, you can feel your throat and your lips vibrating, almost to the point where it almost tickles. I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you per se turn on a vacuum cleaner and attempt to hum and match it up to the same pitch the vacuum cleaner is running, you can hear a harmony, like in your body. You can feel your throat and your lips vibrating at the point where there's a harmony within. Basically, you want to feel your throat, your chest, and your lips vibrating all at once. It's a central point. You're not going to be trying to go too high. You're not going to be trying to go too low. It's just a really relaxed feeling. Let me see if I can go through this with you. Basically, you're going to want to keep your entire body extremely relaxed. You're not going to want to fill up with too much air or too little. Just the regular amount. And just push out extremely slowly. You want to release your lungs out as slow as you can. You don't want to force it out too fast or, force it out too slow. Just a very relaxed level, like so. Now, when you do it, you're definitely going to feel a tickle in your lips, almost to the point where it makes you want to stop. But you'll get used to it after a little while. After the tickling is gone and all the hoarseness in your throat is relieved, you can tell that you're actually pretty much warmed up. It only takes about 2 to 3 minutes of humming to actually warm yourself up to prepare for death metal vocals. The last thing I want to talk to you about is just keeping your mind extremely relaxed while you're going through all of this. Keeping your mind clear and not judging yourself and not criticizing yourself is one of the best things you can do. Not every vocalist is going to sound the same. Well, to the untrained ear, all death metal vocals might sound the same, but after a while you begin to realize that every single vocalist really has their own style. And the ones that try to copy off other vocalists, you can really tell very easily if they're trying to sound like something they're really not. So what I'm trying to do for you guys here today is basically find your own sound. You want to find your own niche within yourself, if that makes any sense. Basically, the objective is to find your own unique sound, how to do it long, and how to do it well. Basically, you need the endurance and you need the self-confidence. Without either of those, you really won't be able to do much at all as a vocalist, and that's something you really need to look into. The first death metal vocal style I'm going to be getting into is just the traditional growl. You can hear a lot of bands like Lamb of God, As They Lay Dying, even Death, one of the original death metal bands, uses a style called the growl. So it's one of the first styles that I learned personally, and that I think for everybody is going to be one of the easiest things to learn. Now, I'm not saying that's for everybody. There are some vocalists that can't even do a growl. But as far as learning the basics, I think it's important to at least fundamentally understand the traditional death metal growl. Now, this is a sound that's going to come from deep within the diaphragm. You're not going to want to put very much stress on your throat. I mean, you're going to feel a slight distress on your throat the first few times you do this, but after a while, your body really starts to get used to it. And after a while, you really won't even be able to tell that you're doing it anymore. It'll almost feel like you're just talking to somebody, per se. To me, there are three major parts to performing the death metal growl. It's going to involve sincerity, first off, breathing properly, second off, and a sustained, stable pressure, third off. You can achieve all three of these very simply, honestly. The sincerity is just trying to be yourself, basically. You're not going to want to sound like anyone else. Your growl isn't going to sound like anyone else's, regardless of how hard you try. So why even try to fight it and try to create your own unique sound? When you're performing death metal, you really have to think from within your mind and within your heart. Because trying to create a fake sound and try to sound like somebody else, you're really just going to be a copy of somebody else. It's not going to be a memorable sound. So when you're really doing this, you really have to clear your mind and really come from within. The second part I talk about is breathing properly. Breathing is something that isn't so important when you're just screaming line by line once in a while, but when you're doing a performance such as an entire song or even an entire show, you're going to get winded, and your endurance is the integrity of your endurance is going to be tested, basically. And one of the keys to getting past the endurance portion is proper breathing. Now, you're going to want to take breaths with your diaphragm. I went through this with you before with the breathing technique, but I'll go through it with you one more time. Before each line, when you're screaming, you're really going to want to keep a good amount of air in your diaphragm. You're never really going to want to run out of air. That is basically a tragedy. I mean, when you're out of air, it severely hinders your endurance. You can lose your train of thought, and you might even get a sense of panic in between lines. So it's really important to keep a sustained amount of air in your diaphragm. Now, when you're practicing, I showed you before, when you breathe, you'll fill up your stomach with air. And as you release a line or perform a line, it'll go down slightly. But if your stomach becomes suppressed completely, and you run out of air, your body's gonna strain to try to find somewhere else to pull that sound from, using the little bit of air you have in there, and that will cause a lot of strain. So it's very important to keep a good balance in your diaphragm when performing vocals. Now, the third part I'm going to talk about is sustained pressure and stability. That basically means that while you're performing your growls, you don't want to put overemphasis on some portions of your vocals and underemphasis on others. You want to create a strong sense of stability. To put it in a simpler term, basically, while you're screaming, you want the same amount of air to come out at all times. You want your stomach to expand and then suppress slowly. You don't want it to fill up and use different amounts of air at different times, and eventually that causes more stress on your diaphragm, which will also hinder your performance and your endurance. So all this kind of goes in a circle. You're going to need to have sincerity, proper breathing, and stability while you're doing your growls. Now, after you've heard over this a couple times and understood everything I have to say, all this combines into a flow, I would like to say. You really have to have a strong flow while you're doing death metal growls. Too much tension or too little tension will cause either a hindrance on your voice or a hindrance on your endurance. Either way, you're really going to have to keep in mind that you need a constant flow while you're doing your growls. You're going to need that constant sincerity. You're going to need the constant flow of proper breathing. And you're also going to need the constant flow of stability and sustained growling while you're doing that. All of it together will create a strong flow, which will give you confidence, and the audience will definitely feel the same confidence that you feel. Now, when you're trying to achieve your growls, it's really important that you don't push too hard. You really need to feel a natural flow. At first, it might be a little bit difficult to find your natural spot while you're growling, but it's nothing that time and practice can't resolve. Honestly, when I started doing growls, and it took me up until recently, honestly, to actually feel completely satisfied with my sound. Growls are something that you can learn, but it'll take a really, really long time to master and for you to feel comfortable with yourself doing them. You know, the volume of your growls, that's something that you'll obtain over time. That's something that you're going to start off, you won't be extremely loud, but, you know, honestly, it really doesn't matter the volume, considering you have a microphone, and, you know, you can always turn up or turn down according to how your voice suits. If you don't have a loud voice, you're not going to have a super loud growl. That's just, you know, something different for each person. And that's where different styles will come into play, and you'll feel more comfortable doing different styles at first. But as long as you keep practicing, you'll feel comfortable doing anything. Now, if we switch over to my recording mic, I'll show you some examples of death metal growls, and I'll put it on some songs for you guys so you guys can get a little bit of a feeling for it, and I'll go, you know, a little bit step by step and show you guys how exactly to do it. Alright guys, from here I'm going to show you some precise ways on how to master your death metal growl and how to find that exact spot on, you know, how to achieve this sound. Like I said earlier, comes from right here or right here, you know, depending on the range where you want to find your growls from. And it's basically just executing them and pushing them out with strength. Now, you don't want to hurt your throat, so I'm going to show you exactly how to do this. There's two ways to perform a death metal growl. There's a lighter, easier way on your throat that doesn't have as much force or body, and there's also a more harsher, more difficult way to perform your growls. Now, I suggest starting with the easier way and working your way up, obviously. So I'm going to show you the difference between the two sounds and how to get to them from your regular voice. Alright. That's a regular death metal growl. Now, put your diaphragm and force into it, you'll receive. Alright. Now you can see the second time there was much more body to the sound. Now when you're fluctuating between different pitches with your growl, you can hear, here's the basic sound, or and now with force, now you can hear that both of them came from basically the same part of my throat, but they're just either slightly elevated or de-elevated depending on the pitch of my voice. Now, to achieve these sounds, the first noise I made is a little bit of a lighter noise. A lot of the stress from that noise is actually my throat. I'm barely even pushing with my diaphragm. It's just a filter that my voice is creating. Now, if you can create a similar voice, you know, judged based on your own needs, then you're ready on your first step to figuring how to do great death metal vocals. With just a little bit extra force from to you can change the complete sound of your voice.
You must never forget the essence of your spark. All that which defines you is the essence of your blood. The infection has been removed. The soul of this machine has improved. The infection has been removed. The soul of this machine has improved.
Okay, now we'll be continuing on to traditional screams. These are a little bit different. You can hear bands like At the Gates, Black Dahlia Murder, Children of Bodom even. They use some high growls in there, and these are a little bit more difficult to achieve. I learned these second, but like I said before, anybody can learn any of these at any time. It's just, you know, the step-by-step process. This might be a little bit easier to learn after you learn how to growl. It's just slightly more difficult to find the right passage in your throat to do these, but once you find it, it's a little bit more easier to master than growls, honestly, in my opinion, that is. This is just as important as growling on how you breathe and using your diaphragm. You're still going to be using your diaphragm to breathe. It's just, you're going to be filtering the air instead of right here in your throat or down here even. You're going to be filtering it up from up here. It's an upper passageway in your throat. You really don't want to use the front of your throat for this either. It's all going to come from the back. And you're not going to be putting any force on your throat. Most of the force is going to be coming from your diaphragm. It's simply just the passage that filters the air. You're not going to be using your vocal cords at all for these. These are all false sounds basically created by your throat. You can tell a big difference than if you're a singer. You can feel your vocal cords even when you're talking, when you're singing and talking, but when you scream, you can tell it's coming from a totally different part of your throat. A lot of traditional screaming is based on the projection of your scream. It's very important to be able to focus your scream into a certain sector per se. You can direct your screams either outward or forward. And it's very important to be able to direct your screams in one direction. A lot of high screams is based on the overall body of the scream. You can tell if someone's using a very airy voice per se when they're doing their highs. There's not much force, there's not much body, there's not much strength. It's just kind of there. There's not much pitch. In order to get a really strong high scream, you have to be able to make it a full sound. Now that might not be something that you can get overnight, like I said, but that is definitely something you can work on as a vocalist. I'll show you a couple examples here. I'll show you my transition from my regular voice into my high scream, just like I did with the growls. Now that was a higher scream. You can also do lower sounds, such as so there's high screams and lower screams. Alright, now as far as death metal screams go, traditional death metal screams, there's also two ways to do this. There's an easy way and there's a hard way. You can always tell when there's a band where the vocalist does the really easy way to do these highs or the way that takes a little bit more endurance and training to do. There's a more airy way and there's a heavier way. Now the transition between your regular voice into the easy way really isn't that hard to accomplish. Get your vocal filter up higher in your throat. It's just a different passageway, and it's something that might take a little bit of time to get used to. Now if you want to listen to some of your favorite bands that might use high screams, you can almost feel in their throat when you listen to them scream where it's coming from. It's not something that you can really describe. It's something that you just need to feel through and find out for yourself. Now, I will transition my regular voice into a scream here on my recording mic, just like I did with the growls, and maybe you guys can try and feel where I'm coming from here. I'm going to do the easier one here first. Alright. Alright, now that's the easier one. You can kind of hear that it's definitely coming from higher up in my throat. Now transitioning from the easy scream to the hard scream is a little bit more difficult. I'll go step by step here and show you exactly how I do it. Now that's a really high scream. There's a couple other pitches you can do with the traditional death metal scream. You can even transition into a lower death metal growl from your scream after a little bit more practice. Once you find your central sound, it's really not that difficult to change the pitch of your traditional death metal scream. You can hear a lot of bands like Mushroom Head, Children of Bodom, In Flames, Soilwork. All these bands, they use a death metal tone, but they have somewhat of a melody to their screams and growls. They can hit certain notes with their screams and growls, although they might not be as accurate as singing. You can still definitely tell that they're hitting different pitches and notes as they're doing their vocals. Now this is really something that takes a little bit more time to get used to and master. These screams also involve the usage of your vocal cords. You're basically going to be combining your screams with your singing voice. Now this isn't exactly one of the most healthy things that you can do. I mean, the vocalist from In Flames went through a couple vocal surgeries from the styles that he used, but in his earlier days they were just styles that weren't exactly, healthy and well put together. Now, for these types of vocals, warm-ups are extremely important. I warm up every time before I even attempt to do any melodic screams or growls. If you do this too much, the first time you start doing it, you might lose your voice. You might even deal damage to your vocal cords. I can't guarantee any safety in doing these melodic screams, but I can definitely guide you in the right direction and towards strengthening yourself. Now, for melodic growls, these require focus on two portions of the vocal body. You're going to be doing your growls, like I said before. It's going to be coming straight from your diaphragm. And you're also going to have to do your singing and clean vocals while attempting to hit notes at the same time. Now you can see how this gets a little bit tricky. Too much strain on either of these portions of the vocal body can definitely cause damage to either of them, and it can also affect your endurance. So you need to find a healthy balance in between both of them, singing and growling, and try to do them both at a mutual level and a healthy level. When you're doing these growls, you really gotta feel the note before you scream it. Like, if you know a line's coming up and a note's coming up, you really gotta try and feel it in your throat and in your mind before you do it. If you try to reach for a note or try too hard to hit the note, you can really deal damage to yourself, and it can, once again, hinder your endurance while you're trying to perform. As far as melodic growls go, they're most likely not going to sound anything like what I'm going to do. Everybody has their own melodic sound. I mean, everybody has their own growl, and everybody has their own singing voice, so combined, it's really going to create a different sound. And if it's not what you want it to sound like, you're really just going to have to work on your own voice and try to progress towards what you want. You're going to have to foresee in your head what you can do and what is possible, so you know what to practice and what to work for. For this portion, I'm going to go straight to the microphone, and I'm going to show you my clean singing voice, and then I'm going to show you what it sounds like when I add the melodic growl to it. I'll show you exactly how to get to that point and some examples of what it might sound like. Alright guys, now we're up to melodic growls. I'm going to show you exactly how I do this and how to transition from your regular singing voice into more of a melodic growl. Now I know I'm not the best singer here, I know for sure, but I'm going to try and show you exactly how I do this. There's only certain songs I can sing. I have more of a lower voice, so I generally only do lower melodic growls. So I'm going to be singing a part of a Soilwork here, part of a Soilwork song here off their newest 2010 album. Here we go. Well, I can feel how it's calling me. Well, I can feel how it hurts. Like the words to a silent sleep. As the beating gets worse. Alright, now I'm going to try and push that into more of a melodic sound. I can feel how it's calling me. I can feel how it hurts. Like the words to a silent sleep. So there you can hear that for my regular clean singing voice, it sounded kind of a little bit shallow. You know, not so strong, but once you put some melodic growl force into it, it can really change the feeling and the integrity of the song. Yeah, you know, it's something you really need to work on. I'm not the best at it yet, but, you know, I'm still working on it every day. So, you know, it's just something that, you know, once you finish mastering traditional screams and growls and you want to expand your horizons, it's something you can always push for. And, you know, you can always change the hoarseness or the strength or the lightness of the growl you put on there. So you can achieve an unbelievable range of sounds with melodic growls. And I'm going to be going on to melodic screams right here, so you can hear a little bit of how to do that. Alright, now I'm going to move on to the obscure styles. These obscure styles are just some stuff I made on my own. And I'm also going to include the melodic scream portion into this, because there's not really any way to do melodic screams without doing vocal layering. Now this is kind of an extremely difficult scream to get into, and should definitely be practiced last before anything else you do. You're basically going to be using two different parts of your throat while you're doing this. You're going to be using this extremely high-pitched portion way up in your throat, and you're also going to be using the traditional scream style on top of it. So you're going to be controlling two different portions of your throat at once. This can be really dangerous, and you really have to build your voice up before you do this. Okay, so when you're learning how to do melodic highs, you're really going to be using two different parts of your throat. You're going to be using this extremely high shrieking noise, almost, coming from your throat, which takes a little bit of time to get used to, honestly. And then you're also going to be layering on top of that your traditional highs. So I'm going to go through and show you right now each portion and how it sounds when they're on top of each other, so you can kind of get an idea here. Now that's the high noise. It doesn't sound very good alone, as you can tell. Now when you layer it on top of your traditional scream, which sounds kind of like ow, you'll get kind of a combined sound, something like this. Now, with just the high shrieking part of my throat, you can hear a "Heow!" To wrap all this up, I just have a couple pointers I want to throw out there. Anybody can do this. Hands down, I guarantee you that anybody can learn how to do this. It's just a matter of how much you want it, how much sincerity you have, and how much you want to practice. If you practice every day, I guarantee you within a year you will be able to do at least one of these styles very well. You just have to prove it to yourself and prove it to everybody else that you're possible of any. Your possibilities are endless. That's what I'm trying to get at. So, thanks everybody for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I just want to help out fellow metalheads, you know, to expand themselves, and you know, hopefully this video will help out whoever watches it. Now, I'm the vocalist for the band Nightshade. If you want to check us out, we have our Facebook. It's facebook.com/NightshadeOfficial. We have an album coming out this year. It's going to be released worldwide. In the US, it's going to be released on April 26th. And in Europe, it's going to be released sometime in May, a little bit later. I believe it's around May 13th or 14th. I can't remember the exact date. But if you check out our MySpace, or Facebook even, then you can find out our exact date. We have teasers up. We have trailers. We have a single out. So, you know, you can check all that stuff out. I'll have links up on this video, and they're also up on my channel. So if you want to take a look at that, you can find all that kind of stuff. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching this, and hopefully this helped you out.